Admit it, you were once scared of those movies with plots of robots taking over humanity. Well, that's not exactly the premise in real life. It is a fact that artificial intelligence has grown from a mere chatbot into a human like presence in the workplace. How exactly can we use this to our advantage? In this episode of B-Side, Microsoft Philippines Chief Executive Officer Peter Maquera tells us how Philippine businesses can prepare as the world enters the era of AI agents. Microsoft's 2025 Work Trend Index report, which talks about how AI and other technologies are reshaping the workplace, mentioned that 90% of Filipino leaders say that this is going to be a pivotal year in rethinking core strategies and operations. So as of the moment, how would you assess Filipino business leaders' confidence level in rolling out their AI strategies?
I think that's an interesting statistic you just mentioned, Bea, because while the percent of leaders are saying it's going to be important, I think there's another statistic that says only half of them feel like that they have a path, if you will, to come up with their right strategy. So from that perspective, I feel that our leaders on average are a little bit behind, and we have to catch up really quickly on how to adapt to the evolving technologies.
What challenges are hampering leaders' adoption of AI? What are the specific market segments or industries that are falling behind?
I think the biggest challenge we're seeing in the marketplace has to do with skilling, but I think this isn't limited to the Philippines. If you think about it, AI, as we're talking about it and experiencing generative AI, for instance, and agentic AI most recently, these are all new. So how can you be an expert?
The report also mentioned that 80% of business leaders said that their company is considering to add AI-focused roles. And could you specify maybe how have job expectations evolved from when AI was first introduced? And what is the expertise level that companies are already looking for?
Yeah, I'd probably break that up into two dimensions. There's the skilling you need to use AI tools that are there, right? So, you could pick up already, let's say, ChatGPT, and I think the more I talk to people, I'm realizing that actually it's not uncommon to find people that actually use 3, 4, 5 different AIs. So I think there's skilling in terms of the tools that are out there. I think the big challenge that's a blocker or at least a limiter in how fast we can adopt is skilling within the organization to employ, architect, and adopt AI across the organization. I think that is much more technical, where you'll need to know things like machine learning and have data scientists and have prompt engineers. So I think those are hard to find, and to actually have that organization structure in the company to then architect and have your adoption journey and strategy, I think is really complex.
How ready are Philippine companies with regards to having a human-led and agent-operated workforce? Because we are already seeing that this is encapsulating the future of work.
Yeah, so I think if your question is Philippines different, then I think we have as opportunity as well as anyone to adapt, and I think it's that growth mindset. So I think the role of the human will still be there in the context of, in not everything is just process, right? There's still judgment that needs to happen. There's still exceptions that happen, right? There's still the many human aspects that are left. So I think in its further evolution, I think the person it ends up with the more high value human aspects as opposed to the routine.
And speaking of human aspects, I'm sure you saw the news back in May of the 18.9 million Filipinos who are functionally illiterate, and that is according to the 2024 Functional Literacy, Education, and Mass Media Survey conducted by the Philippine Statistics Authority. How will this affect Filipinos' eventual job worthiness in an AI-driven workplace?
I was very afraid of that number. I'm afraid for the Philippines. If we're not able to resolve that problem. So I think the encouraging part, I think we need to really hold the fire alarm, if you will, in terms of upskilling and adapting to AI. I think some of the things that work in our favor is these are young people. Young people, I think, tend to be more adaptable to new technologies. And I think because AI is the tool itself, because it's natural language based, it's easier to adapt to a tool. So I don't think the 19 million will be the engineers architecting AI companies. But they could be the users of the tool to transform companies. So, one of the areas that we're looking at is AI in cybersecurity, right? So there's a lot of work around, analyzing threat signals, right? So arguably, because you can now use AI and prompt in natural language, a lot of that perhaps could be done by a high school student. Right? So I think AI could really be a positive force to quickly upskill the 20 million people and make them much more productive in the workforce.
What industries are, at this point, still at risk of worker displacement, and how can workers threatened by AI ensure their place in the job market?
The one that everyone seems to be concerned about, which I think which we should be concerned about, is the BPO industry. So to the extent that there are easier, lower value, repetitive tasks, I think the companies need to adapt AI there because there's really no stopping it, right? But I think the encouraging thing is that, yes, there will be jobs lost, just like when we moved from farming to manufacturing, right? I think there were a lot of jobs lost, but at the same time, there were a lot of jobs created. And I think there were many more jobs created to replace the jobs lost. So for instance, with the advent of social media, right? What are the new jobs? You have web designers, you have influencers, you have, there's all kinds of jobs that didn't exist before. So I think that the important thing is, you need to recognize that it's here. And you need to adapt really quickly. So you don't want to be a frog in boiling water. Right? This change is already happening around you, and you need to recognize it and act on it.
I wanted to go back to Agent AI, since we know that AI agents are quick to adopt, and of course, they have a quote-unquote mind of their own. How can companies that manage multiple AI agents across their networks ensure that these AI agents are still ethical in their work? How can we ensure the ethical and proper use of AI?
Yeah, the agents are people. The agents are designed by us. Right, so we're the ones that ground the AI. We're the ones that point it to the data that it works with. We're the ones that train, against biases and wrong information. So, I think that's for the new AI jobs around engineering to architect and design those agents. Because for AI to work, right, you have to be able to trust it. It has to be, fair. It has to be transparent. You have to be able to trace where it's getting its data. You have to be accountable for the things that it does. So we have a lot of frameworks at Microsoft for what we call responsible AI practices. It's very fundamental to designing your AI business model. The top 5 things that separate the ones who are most successful in AI versus the ones who are not. First, the very first one is leadership, being able to correlate the investment of AI with business impact. So having that AI strategy, but translating it to what does it mean to ROI and the company, right? The second biggest blocker is modernizing your technology so that you can actually access your data. If you can't get to your data or your manual, then how do you then leverage AI? The third one is once you have that and can get your data, what is your data strategy? What data is important and how do you then use that data to create value? The fourth one, which arguably I think should be number one, is skilling, right? If you don't have the AI expertise to architect that in your organization, then how will you ever deploy it at scale? You'll just be stuck doing AI at the individual level. And the fifth one is what you've been asking me about, is responsible AI practices, right? To make sure that you preserve personal data and the sensitivity of classified documents that are intellectual property of organizations. So if I wanted to become an AI company, my greatest chance of success will be focusing on those 5 things.
This has been another episode of B-Side. Subscribe now and enjoy industry insights on Philippine business and beyond.